Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're not just diving into a topic, we're really exploring a situation that seems to be accelerating fast. The latest on Iran's nuclear program, it's profoundly complex, definitely high stakes, and it feels a bit like a ticking clock, doesn't it? We're here to help you cut through some of the noise and hopefully understand what's truly at stake. We've pulled together quite a stack of sources for this deep dive. We've got recent analysis from the Institute for Science and International Security, we'll call them ISIS for short, plus the latest reports, resolutions from the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, also a Security Council report forecast, some insights from Al Jazeera, the Arms Control Association, and even, broader public commentary from places like Reddit. So our mission, as always, is to pull out the most critical nuggets of knowledge, the key insights, to give you a shortcut to being well-informed on this really pivotal subject. We'll explore Iran's current capabilities. What can they actually do? We'll look at the big challenges facing international oversight.
And, of course, the high-stakes diplomatic and, military considerations shaping things. Let's plunge in. So let's maybe kick things off by looking at what these reports are telling us about Iran's actual nuclear capabilities. What are we seeing? In terms of enrichment levels, potential breakout times, how close are they really getting?
Well, what's truly fascinating and frankly concerning here is just the sheer scale of Iran's enriched uranium stock. According to that May 2025 ISIS report, Iran currently has around 408.6 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% U-235.
Okay, 60%. And U-235, just to remind everyone, that's the key isotope, right? The fissile one.
Exactly. That's the stuff you need for a nuclear chain reaction. And this stock, it's seen a really rapid, almost alarming increase. It jumped from about 182 kilograms back in November 2024 to almost 275 kilograms in February 2025. And now, just a few months later, it's over 400 kilograms.
Wow, that's a steep curve.
It really is. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the ISIS report highlights that Iran is undertaking what they call the near final step of breaking out. It's not just about the numbers, it seems to be a fundamental strategic shift. They're significantly expanding their rate of converting 20% enriched uranium into this 60% material. And crucially, the report states, and this is a direct quote, there is no civilian use or justification for its production of 60% enriched uranium, particularly at the level of hundreds of kilograms.
No civilian use. That definitely raises red flags.
It does, because producing it at that scale without a clear civilian need raises serious proliferation concerns. 60% gets you very, very close to weapons grade.
So that quantity, over 400 kilos, it sounds significant. But what does breaking out actually mean? Like, in terms of building an actual weapon, what are the timelines? You mentioned something earlier about days. That sounds incredibly fast.
Yeah, that's the really startling part. It raises this extremely important question about the speed of conversion, how close they actually are. The ISIS analysis suggests Iran could convert its current 60% stock into about 233 kilograms of weapon-grade uranium WGU in just 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
At the Fordow fuel enrichment plant, yes. And that 233 kilos, that's enough for 9 nuclear weapons, based on the standard benchmark of about 25 kilos per weapon.
9 weapons worth of material in 3 weeks.
And even more startling, the first 25 kilograms of WGU, enough for that first weapon, could potentially be produced at Fordow in as little as 2 to 3 days.
2 to 3 days. That kind of speed. Well, what does that even mean for, the international community's ability to react or deterrence?
It dramatically shrinks the window for any kind of intervention or diplomatic response.
Yeah.
And if they use both Fordow and the Natanz plant for a breakout, well, the numbers climb even faster. They could potentially produce enough WGU for 11 nuclear weapons in the first month alone. And possibly hitting 15 by the end of month 2, 19 by month 3, 21 by month 4, maybe up to 22 weapons worth by the end of the 5th month. It really demonstrates a clear, escalating capability that puts immense pressure on the whole global non-proliferation system.
Okay, that's sobering. And there was something about the physics making it easier.
Ah, yes. That's a point you see discussed a lot in forums, analyst reports. We saw it mentioned on Reddit, too. Enriching from 60% up to 95%, which is considered weapons grade, it actually gets easier. It's because of a nonlinear relationship in something called separative work. Basically, the physics involved means getting to 60% is most of the hard work.
So the last jump is faster.
Proportionally, yes. It requires much less additional effort. So 60% enriched uranium is, roughly speaking, like 90% of the way to being finished weapons-grade material. It really underscores just how close they are once they hit that 60% mark.
That certainly paints a deeply concerning picture of a program moving very fast, hitting critical points quickly. Stepping back, though, are there Are there any other interpretations, maybe suggesting less immediate danger?
Hmm?
Or are these numbers pretty much accepted?
Well, interpretations of intent can always vary. People debate why they're doing it. But the factual numbers, the production levels, the enrichment rates, as reported by the IAEA and then analyzed by groups like ISIS, they seem largely consistent across credible assessments. The debate isn't really about the quantity of material or the technical capability. Most agree on that. It's more about the intent behind it and, what's the best way to respond. But the consensus is definitely that the technical capacity is accelerating fast, which of course brings us straight to oversight.
Absolutely. With capabilities seemingly surging in these numbers, what about the international eyes on the program, the IAEA? How well can the world actually monitor this, especially given, Iran's history here? Are the inspectors flying partially blind?
That's a huge challenge right now. The IAEA's ability to monitor has been significantly diminished. It's creating some dangerous blind spots. The IAEA Board of Governors adopted a pretty strong resolution on June 12, 2025. It deeply regrets their words that despite repeated calls and many opportunities offered, Iran has failed to cooperate fully with the agency. It's quite a statement. It points to a real breakdown in trust and transparency.
Failed to cooperate fully. What does that mean in practice?
Well, the resolution specifically notes Iran's failure to provide technically credible explanations for finding uranium particles, human-made uranium, at several undeclared locations. Places like Lavisan-Shian, Varmin, Turkosabad. The agency just isn't in a position to say where that nuclear material or maybe contaminated equipment is now.
So it's not just about watching declared sites, it's about finding traces elsewhere and not getting answers.
Exactly. It's about what might be hidden, what's unaccounted for.
So inspectors are limited not just in what they see, but where they can see, and verifying past activities. What are the most dangerous unknowns that come from this loss of continuity of knowledge you mentioned?
Precisely. The IAEA says it has lost continuity of knowledge on things like centrifuge production and inventory, heavy water stocks, uranium, or concentrate. And they state quite bluntly that it will not be possible to restore this knowledge.
Not possible to restore, so
Yeah.
that information is just gone.
Effectively, yes. They don't know the full scope of Iran's manufacturing capabilities or their current stocks of some key materials. Plus, Iran removed all the JCPOA-related surveillance gear, the cameras and seals from the 2015 nuclear deal. The IAEA says this has detrimental implications for their ability to assure the world the program is peaceful.
And that includes design info for new facilities.
Right. They're refusing to implement something called Modified Card 3.1, which requires providing design information for new nuclear facilities before they start building. It just further obscures what they're up to.
So the most dangerous unknown is how much material is out there, unaccounted for, and where it might be.
That's probably the crux of it. And the IAEA's June 2025 resolution. It concludes Iran's failures add up to non-compliance with its safeguards agreement. It says the agency is not able to verify that there has been no diversion of nuclear material. That's a very serious finding from the world's nuclear watchdog.
No diversion. They can't verify that. Wow.
Yeah. They express grave concern, and they've referred the whole matter to the UN Security Council, kicking it up to the highest international body. And what's particularly concerning, as the IAEA notes, is this rapid accumulation of highly enriched uranium by Iran, the only state without nuclear weapons that is producing such materials.
The only non-nuclear weapon state doing this.
That unique status, combined with the lack of transparency, it really underscores the urgency of the potential for a proliferation crisis.
Okay, so capabilities are surging. The world's eyes are partially blindfolded. This brings us right to the geopolitical chess game. The Security Council is holding its last mandated meeting on this in June, right? Before parts the JCPOA and Resolution 2231 expire in October. What's actually happening on the diplomatic front as this deadline looms?
Well, there are ongoing bilateral talks between the U.S. under President Trump and Iran, trying to find a deal, curb the program in exchange for sanctions relief. But the public messaging has definitely hardened. There seem to be significant obstacles. The U.S. is demanding Iran dismantle its entire nuclear infrastructure, stop all enrichment, while Iran insists it has the right to low-level enrichment for civilian purposes under the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
That's the cornerstone treaty, right?
Yeah.
Preventing spread, but allowing peaceful use.
Exactly. But these positions seem pretty far apart right now. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, expressed pessimism about a deal back in May. So deep divisions remain.
And we've seen military actions, or at least threats, playing out around these talks too, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's not just diplomatic maneuvering.
Definitely. While President Trump has threatened military action if there's no deal, he's also stated a preference for diplomacy. Reportedly, he rejected an Israeli plan for a strike.
Rejected it. But Israel might still.
Well, there are media reports suggesting Israel is still planning a potential military operation if the talks ultimately fail. That raises the specter of preemptive strikes. It creates a really volatile environment. A miscalculation could have severe consequences.
And this leads to that debate about whether military action even works here, right?
Precisely. The Arms Control Association, for example, argues strongly that striking Iran's facilities would be counterproductive. They call it reckless and irresponsible escalation. Their fear is it could actually push Tehran to decide, okay, now we definitely need nuclear weapons for our security.
Kind of a backfire effect.
Exactly. They point to past sabotage, like the Stuxnet cyber attack. After Stuxnet, Iran didn't stop. They actually built more resilient facilities, harder to target, and they even accelerated enrichment in some cases, like enriching to 60% after the sabotage at Natanz in 2021. So the argument is these actions might inadvertently speed things up, not slow them down. Classic unintended consequences.
Stuxnet. I remember hearing about it, but remind us, what exactly was it? How did software cause physical damage?
Right. Stuxnet was this incredibly sophisticated, malicious computer worm uncovered around 2010, widely believed to be a joint U.S.-Israeli cyber weapon. It specifically targeted the industrial control systems, PLCs, in Iran's nuclear centrifuges in Natanz. It secretly messed with their speeds, made them spin too fast or erratically, basically causing them to tear themselves apart physically.
Wow.
Reports suggest it destroyed maybe around 1,000 centrifuges. It was really a groundbreaking digital attack aimed at setting back the program without a traditional military strike.
But Iran's response seems to be hardening defenses and pushing forward.
That seems to be the pattern. And conversely, Iran's foreign minister warned the UN Security Council they'd retaliate against any use of force, said Iran would implement special measures to protect its nuclear facilities, which of course could make international monitoring even harder. And in this whole context, you have to remember the consistent rhetoric from some Iranian leaders. It gets cited a lot in online discussions. We looked at calls for the annihilation or destruction of Israel, often backed up by missile parades with anti-Israel slogans.
And some argue that's not just rhetoric.
Some analysts and observers describe it as stated policy, not just slogans, which adds another layer of deep concern and urgency to their nuclear advancements and this whole diplomatic dance.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, we've navigated Iran's growing nuclear capabilities, pretty significant blind spots facing the inspectors, and this really high-stakes game of diplomacy versus military deterrence. That October 18th deadline, it feels less like a date and more like a potential inflection point for global security. The options, none of them look easy, all fraught with complex implications. But stepping back, what does this all truly mean for global security? You have a nation, Iran, described by the IAEA as the only non-nuclear weapon state producing this highly enriched material, at the same time issuing aggressive rhetoric towards a key regional player, Israel, and facing limited international oversight. The question isn't just what happens next, but maybe how the world responds effectively. How do you balance diplomacy with the need for real verification, especially when past actions like sabotage seem to have had these unforeseen accelerating effects? It really is a chess game. Monumental stakes for regional stability and maybe the future of non-proliferation itself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel better informed and ready to think about the critical questions this whole evolving situation presents.